Okay, so in this video, I want to go over the cyber workforce study for 2023 that ISC2 did. If you're not familiar with who ISC2 is, they are the vendor that makes the CISSP certification for cybersecurity. It's one of the best known certifications in our career field. But every year, typically, they do some kind of survey and they look at different things from around the career field just to give you more information about what's going on, what companies are looking for, those kinds of things. And I got an email the other day about this being released. And so I just want to walk through some of the important things in here and just talk about some of the things that we see in here. If you want to check out the report, I definitely recommend going to the ISC2 website and you can click the read report. It'll give you a PDF of the report that you can go through. We're not going to cover every single word in here. We're going to try to hit on the major things that are covered, but you can get your own report and I'll leave a link in the description for you so you can get to the page where you can get it. So if we start scrolling down here, it starts out with an executive summary just talking about the overall landscape of the industry, of the career field, things like that. You can see right away they start talking about things like COVID, and we're not going to talk about that specifically in here, but obviously that was a major thing that impacted a lot of different industries. Keep scrolling down here. Major highlight here, 75% of whoever they surveyed said the current threat landscape is the most challenging that it's been in the past 5 years. That's definitely true. A lot of things have changed, new vulnerabilities, new ways of doing business, right? We have a lot of remote workers, things like that. So a lot of things have changed. Keep scrolling down here. So key findings. Cybersecurity workforce and gap have both grown, right? This is a really important one for everybody in the career field or trying to get into the career field. In the past year, the cybersecurity workforce has grown by 8.7%. In addition, the gap between the number of workers needed and the number available has also continued to grow with a 12.6 increase year over year. So, we need more people. We're filling some of those jobs that are current, but how many jobs we need to fill or the types of jobs that we need to fill, that number is growing, right? We're just finding new places where we need more people. And we're not really making up a lot of that ground, right? It's like we take one step forward and then where we need to get is like 3 steps further out. The finish line is being extended out, right? So that's an important finding for sure. Cybersecurity has not been immune to cutbacks. I'm not sure if you've been affected by cutbacks, but there's been a lot of people that have been. 47% of cybersecurity professionals have dealt with cutbacks to their teams in the form of layoffs, budget cuts, and hiring or promotion freezes. 22% have experienced layoffs, and 31% expect additional cutbacks in the next year. So in cybersecurity, we already run fairly lean in most departments and most companies, and this is just going to make things even leaner. So this is why you need to have diverse skill sets so you can do multiple things, and you're not just going to be the person that can do one single thing where you could be the one that is let go because you don't bring enough value if they have to cut how much funding is in there, right? That's a key finding that you have to think about in your career. Staffing shortages and skill gaps are consistent challenges. 67% of respondents reported that their organization has a shortage of cybersecurity staff needed to prevent and troubleshoot security issues. 92% report having skill gaps in their organizations, the most common being cloud computing, security, AI, ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning, and zero trust implementation. We've seen a lot of those technologies or those areas talked a lot about in the industry and the career field. And, we're not quite where we need to be as far as the general skill set of the people that are working in our career field. Those are areas that really have to improve. If you've ever talked to me or heard me talk about specific skills that are really important, cloud, right? Cloud is so important to at least have an understanding of how things operate. You might not be the one that's configuring this stuff. You might be, relying on other people to do it, but you know how to analyze it. You know some potential security risks that exist with it, things like that. You're just knowledgeable about it compared to somebody who doesn't have any knowledge. Somebody who's really focused on the traditional on-premise mindset. So, as more jobs come open or are created, they're going to involve things like cloud, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and zero trust, right? Like those are three very, very big hot buttons right now, and they will continue to be in the future. Ongoing education and training helps shrink skills gaps. 58% of cybersecurity professionals said the negative impact of worker shortage can be mitigated by filling key skill gaps. We found that those who continue their training, education, and certification reimbursement programs were far better prepared to weather times of economic uncertainty. If you want to minimize the potential of getting laid off or having trouble finding a new job, if you have to keep learning. This is something that I always talk about. You can't just stay stagnant in this career field. If you give up or you stop learning, you stop growing your skills and your knowledge, then you're going to probably run into a situation where you either get laid off, you can't find a new job that you want, so you have kind of your progression stunted or stopped, and a whole bunch of other potential issues. So you have to keep growing. You have to keep developing skills. We're not even very far into this document, and these are already major things that a lot of people, frankly, don't do, or they ignore. They kind of put them off to the side and say, well, I'll do that later, right? You have to keep learning. Cybersecurity professionals face an unprecedented threat landscape. We already kind of talked about this. 75% of cybersecurity professionals view the current landscape as the most challenging it's been in the last 5 years. That's because new technologies, new ways of doing business, right? With cloud, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all those kinds of things are introducing new issues that we have to address. They're expanding the threat landscape. It's not the same as it was if it's just a traditional on-site implementation or deployment of something like Windows Server, right? We're starting to open this stuff up to the web so remote workers can access it and do all these kinds of things. And with that, threat landscape is going to increase. Times of economic uncertainty pose significant threat to cybersecurity. 71% of respondents agree that periods of economic uncertainty increase the risk of malicious insiders. Totally right. Especially with malicious insiders, obviously external as well. Sometimes you get attackers that will target certain businesses because they know they're starting to make cutbacks and they have a smaller security team, so it's an easier target. But especially with malicious insiders, let's say you have somebody that is hurting financially, right? Those tend to be targets for things like being taken advantage of, especially by like foreign governments or something like that, where they have a decent amount of funds where they can either entice you or, give you a little bit of cash to kind of incentivize you to keep working with them, right? So that's a serious, serious thing when it comes to employees. That's also why you don't want to, significantly underpay your employees, because you're just asking for situations that are similar to this or, in some fashion causing people to become malicious insiders. So it's very, very, that's an important one, right? Like that's one that sometimes I feel like companies don't always pay attention to, right? Especially like paying their employees enough. I think that we've come a long ways as far as compensation in cybersecurity, but 10, 20 years ago, the salary figures that you see today were not what they were then. Guaranteed. Important for sure. Job satisfaction took a slight dip, but remains high. 70% of cybersecurity professionals say they are satisfied with their jobs today, which represents 4% drop from last year. With cutbacks and things like that, more lean teams, people are having to pick up more responsibilities. That naturally is going to lead to less job satisfaction, right? When you're feeling overloaded and overwhelmed because you're having to do more and more and more, that's going to lead to less job satisfaction. That's just how it is, right? That's a balancing act with the company, making sure that you're not overwhelming your employees because you refuse to hire enough staff to properly equip a team. So, very important. Let's take a second real quick and talk about Cyber Training Pro. Are you tired of overpaying for cybersecurity training? Are you interested in training from industry professionals? Are you looking for cybersecurity career services? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then cybertrainingpro.com is the perfect platform for you. At Cyber Training Pro, we're a one-stop shop for all your cybersecurity needs. We can train you for industry certifications or just improve your overall knowledge and skills in a certain area. Unlike other platforms, we don't stop there. We can also coach you throughout your career, practice your interview skills, or create a high-performing resume with our career services. CyberTrainingPro.com isn't just another training platform. Students get exclusive access to our private community where we go beyond training courses to provide additional content, tips and tricks, and engagement with both other students and staff. Look, by the year 2025, there could be as many as 3.5 million job openings in cybersecurity. With so much opportunity, why not maximize your career potential with a platform that cares about your success? Come join us at cybertrainingpro.com and start building your future today. Pathways into cybersecurity are shifting. We saw a significant shift in who is entering the cybersecurity profession and how they're doing it. So it's not one we really have to dive too much into, right? We see people coming from all different areas, all different career fields that are switching into cybersecurity. Some are tech related, some are not tech related at all, right? Could be coming from a sales job or a hairdresser or something completely unrelated. Lawyer, I don't know, right? Like there's all these kinds of options. And how we bridge that gap, how we get these people into situations where they learn enough, they learn the things they need to, and we can leverage the other skills that they are bringing to the table. That's an important aspect of cybersecurity and how we're going to ultimately fill a lot of these workforce shortages that we're having. Organizations need professionals with cloud computing skills, but they're hard to find. There's still not a ton of people that are really, really solid in cloud. If you can get solid in cloud, you are going to rise to the top of a lot of companies as far as their application process and the jobs that they're trying to fill. AI ML is becoming increasingly critical. I think this is going to continue, especially as companies start developing their own models. Cybersecurity professionals value experience over formal education. We've talked about this a lot. Education is important, but on-the-job experience is the most valuable thing that can't be replaced. You can't manufacture on-the-job experience. So both are definitely helpful as far as being a candidate, and we're not going to get into the makeup of formal education, certifications, things like that versus actual experience and kind of how that comparison or which one is a certain percentage of how that impacts you getting a job. But understand that both are important. But ultimately, it is about the experience, right? All right, so current state of the cybersecurity workforce. We already kind of talked about this a little bit. Cutbacks and economic uncertainty add to the existing skills gap challenge. So this gives us a little bit more information as well as a survey. So has your organization experienced the following cutbacks in the past 12 months? So yes, hiring freeze, 32% said yes. Yes, but not in cybersecurity, 26%. No, but we have not experienced this. So hiring freeze, still the majority have not experienced this, but still a decent number have, right? About a third have. Budget cuts, 30% have. 38% have not. So they're almost even, right? Freeze on promotions, raises, 26%. 52% have not. So the freezes on promotions and raises, that's not really happening as much. People are still getting their promotions and raises, it looks like, in comparison to things like just not hiring people or cutting budgets, things like that. And then layoffs. Looks like layoffs is still lower, 22% have, 50% have not, right? So if we kind of look at these, it's mainly hiring freezes are high, right? That's pretty comparable across the board. Budget cuts, that's another one. So they're basically not hiring or they're not adding funding to the department. So they're not getting new tools maybe. They're not getting new training or something like that. It's not so much they're hurting the people that are currently there or not giving them promotions or laying them off. It's just the new people that they're having trouble bringing in. If you look at this, has your organization experienced layoffs in the past 12 months? So industries with the fewest layoffs in cyber, 8% military contractor, okay? And government, 9%. A lot of times that's because military and government, sometimes their budget cycles or how they're impacted by things in the economy differs than it does in the regular world, right? In other companies, regular companies. And so a lot of times you'll see differences as far as when they get impacted versus others. Aerospace, 13%. Education, 13%. Transportation, 16%. The ones with the most layoffs, entertainment and media, probably like your Netflix, those kind of companies, right? Construction, security software, hardware development, automotive, hosted cloud services. So quite a bit higher, right? 8% for military contractors compared to entertainment and media, four times higher in those areas than military and military contractors. It's an important trend to keep in mind. Has your organization experienced layoffs in the past 12 months? So by locations, right? Countries, fewest layoffs, Hong Kong, US, Saudi Arabia, Canada, Singapore, right? Singapore is getting up there, 23%. United States is under 20%. So with the most layoffs, Brazil at 38% on the top. Mexico, Nigeria, United Arab Emirates, China. So, kind of a difference in economies, right? And the countries. So that might be something to consider if you're in one of these countries with the most layoffs. Maybe you look to try to go to a country with the fewest layoffs. That obviously creates some unique challenges of its own, switching countries, moving somewhere else. Maybe you're not a citizen of a certain country or something, right? That can certainly create challenges, but that's an important thing to kind of keep in mind, right? It's not only just the city or the state where you're working or you're living. Maybe it's the country, right? Maybe it's the industry. If we look at this, we kind of already started talking a little bit about this, but which of the following effects has your organization or team experienced as a result of the cutbacks? 53% for cybersecurity say it delays in purchasing and implementing technology. 40% said the team was restructured or moved within the organization. Maybe they were their own separate area. Now they're moved like under IT or something because there was a restructuring. There was cutbacks, there was layoffs, things like that. Organization changed its strategic direction. 35% saying training programs have been cut. Keep that in mind, especially as somebody who is trying to get into the career field or trying to advance your career. This is one thing that I cannot stress enough. You cannot entirely rely on your employer to 100% fund all of your education to advance your career, right? A lot of times, especially when it's a training related to your role, hopefully they're willing to pay for it, right? That's not always the case. And if you want to advance your career, you want to get into a better position, you want to get into a different position, you need to take some of the responsibility on yourself and try to figure out a way to use low-cost resources or find a way to gather some extra cash, maybe work another part-time job just to get a little bit of extra cash, something to help you get into those other training aspects. I'll be honest, as you grow in this career field, you're going to make a lot of money, right? The money goes really quickly. So it's not as much, I have to spend $100 or something like that, even though that can be a challenge, in certain situations. But what if that $100 can translate to like $10,000 or a big raise, right? That's something that I don't think people always think about when they're talking about this stuff, because a lot of people, obviously a lot of people are quick to jump to, I want a free option, or I want this option and very low cost or something, right? I'm not saying go out and spend $100,000. That's a different discussion, right? But, that is something to consider, because if you can spend $100 or something and get a big raise or get enough skills, is that worth it? That might be worth it, right? And you can't just jump to the free option or the low cost option, because that might not be the best option. Even this, 29% cybersecurity certifications, educations, reimbursement have been cut. It's just like pensions for retirement. Pensions went away, right? Pensions are not really a thing anymore. That's why you have 401k. You have to have some of the responsibility on your shoulders for this, right? It's your career. This is also important. Impact of cutbacks on cybersecurity professionals and teams. 71% increase in workload. If there's cuts, you're going to get more workload. That's how it is. 63% cybersecurity team morale. Obviously, that's going to impact morale. People don't want to get all this extra work just slammed on top of them, right? Because that creates more difficulties, that creates just higher stress levels, and a lot of issues can result from that. Burnout, things like that. This is another section that I want to cover too real quick and just talk about briefly. To what extent does your organization's security team have one or more skills gaps? So when you look at job postings and you look at the skills and information that's listed in the job posting, those are the skills that employers are looking for. Okay? So those are the skills that you need to be trying to learn or develop so that you can get those kinds of jobs. One of the problems is if you're going for all of these random skills that aren't listed on job postings, you're not going to have the skills that are required or that the employer wants, right? They might be like, oh, well, you have an impressive resume and maybe you can learn skill XYZ, right? But the truth is, you don't have that skill at that point. If you don't have the skill, you're, for one, going to be one of the first that's going to get cut if you haven't developed those skills. Also, if you don't have the skills, how are you going to help your team improve? You don't have the core skills that they need to get the job done first, and then you can expand on other skills. That's just an important thing that I want to point out. In this section, I highly encourage you to go through and check it, but that's a really important thing. You've got to have the skills that the team needs, the core skills, and then the more that you can build on that, the more valuable that you become in an organization. This is another section that I want to talk about because this is an area that we still need to work on for cybersecurity, and honestly in a lot of different job markets, not just cybersecurity, but ISC2 does talk about it and they kind of break it down so you can understand what the workforce is looking like. So age group by race and gender. So right here, 60 or older, that's where it starts, right? White men, 70%, 13% white women, 15% non-white men, 2% non-white women, okay? 50 to 59, 63% white men, 10% white women, 22% non-white men, 6% non-white women. If we go all the way down to under 30, because you can see it as it kind of is decreasing here, under 30, 37% white men, 6% white women, 40% non-white women, 18% non-white women. So this is one thing where we, in cybersecurity, we really want to have a diverse work set. This is the DEI section of this report, right? We want to have, over these different gaps, these different age ranges, we want to have a very diverse workforce, right? So that's awesome to see that, especially in the younger ages. You can see, especially with the women in the profession, we need more people in there, right? That is definitely an underrepresented area, especially like when we look at the under 30. That's kind of alarming, right? We see between the white women and non-white women, we see a total of 24%. So a little under a quarter of the workforce. If we can grow that a lot, that would be great, right? We got to increase that. We got to work on that. Which of the following most accurately describes you? And then it comes down here and it talks a little bit more about the gender breakdown. So male versus female. It's obviously a very male-dominated career field right now. And again, we need to work on that. We need to increase the overall diversity that we have in the career field. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody, right? That's an area that a lot of industries, a lot of companies are struggling with, is how to increase the diversity, right, across different career fields. Cybersecurity is not immune to that. We need to work on that for sure. With which of the following ethnic or cultural groups do you primarily identify? Non-white and white are the two options that it gives. 60 and older, again, predominantly white. If we look down here towards under 30, we start having a more diverse workforce, and that's great, right? We really start to see the breakdown of 30 to 38 and lower. So under 38, that's where it's starting to be more diverse. Maybe that's because this is an area that is starting to really develop itself as a potential career field for a lot of people. So we're starting to see it be more diverse. This is another interesting section. Which of the following did you do before your first cybersecurity job? I'm sure a lot of you are going to be interested in this. the number one option or the number one response was they got a non-cybersecurity IT position. Then we have got my first cybersecurity certification, independently learned about cybersecurity concepts, got a bachelor's degree in a non-related field, got a bachelor's degree in cybersecurity or other related field, served in the military, got a position not in IT or cybersecurity. So you can see the breakdown between these different responses. But again, that very first option closely with cybersecurity certification, but it's got a non-cybersecurity IT position, right? Talk a lot about this. You have to just apply to IT and cybersecurity positions, and you kind of have to see what happens. And then you get a position or you land a job, land an opportunity, and then you have to find out how to pivot that or use that, leverage that into where you want to go and continue your progress to where you're looking at ultimately getting. All right, so I just want to go through that workforce study just so you can see some of the stats that really stand out. I highly recommend that you grab a copy of it on ISC2's website. Again, I'll leave a link in the description to it, but it's got a lot of great information that can help you understand kind of how the workforce is set up right now, where things have evolved as far as percentages of people entering the workforce, the age breakdowns, all those kinds of things. That way you'll be more informed about your career and about the industry, right? Information is important that can help shape the decisions that you make, the path that you choose, the different jobs that you choose, the skills that you choose, right? Like all that stuff can be impacted by more information. I'm a firm believer that the more information that you have, the more informed obviously that you'll be, but that will give you more opportunities. You'll make smarter decisions because you'll be more educated on what you need to know and what matters, right? I'm a big believer in having data. Data is what ultimately will show you the truth, right? Like you can learn a lot from data. You hear a lot from different people about, oh, this certification or whatever, right? This path, but the data doesn't lie, right? If you have data, whether that's job application, a job posting, what an employer is actually doing, what's happening in the market, all of those things, data will not lie. So keep that in mind as you progress in your career. Till next time, I'll see you later.